in our congregation sitting between funeral services for Jean yesterday and for Rod this next Saturday. In recent years, we've lost a lot of others as well. In one sense, it's, in nearly every case, it has been bittersweet in the sense that those who have passed have been well along in years, having lived full lives, making it no less sad. But with these losses, we are made so aware of how an era is passing. Those of us who have lost elderly parents, and many of us, of course, have, recognize that once one comes to that time in life, a particular time in life, when this happens. So it's a tender time, and I'm drawn today to this tender scene in John's Gospel at the Bethany home of Jesus' friends, Mary, her sister Martha, their brother Lazarus, whom Jesus, just a few days before, had resuscitated from death. Jesus had come to see his friends before he entered Jerusalem for the last time. And Martha had made a dinner for them, and just as they were sitting down to eat, Mary, her sister, Jesus' dear friend, comes to him with a clay jar full of expensive ointment and anoints his feet with the perfume, wiping them with her hair, demonstrating an extravagant love and devotion. It's a scene that is framed by death, you might say, the death of Lazarus, his being brought to life again, which, aside from the benefit it held for Lazarus and his sisters who loved him, was the act that set in motion the determination of the officials to bring Jesus down all the way to his own death. When Judas complained that the perfume that Mary decided to pour out on Jesus' feet could have been sold for a lot of money, which in turn could have been used to help the poor, Jesus said, "Leave her alone. Let me have this moment." The room was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. Inhibitions were let go of. A woman would let her hair down only in the presence of her husband or in time of mourning, and would never touch the feet of a man not her husband, nor never would a man not her husband let her do so. It is a sensual scene, an intimate scene. Mary and Martha's brother was back with them, and Jesus would soon be gone from them. Rejoicing and grieving at the same time, bittersweet indeed. Mary felt it all, and apparently Jesus did too. Leave her alone. Leave us alone. Don't prevent this moment. Don't inhibit her lavish love for me. She knows she's anointing me for burial. Judas intruded on this tender scene with his extremely practical objection, seemingly rooted in compassion for the poor and heart for justice. We can imagine his indignation. He saw her act as extreme wastefulness. And even though John tells us parenthetically that Judas didn't really care for the poor, we can see his point. We're familiar with the sentiment. Jesus responds that you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me, which sometimes is, but never should be, quoted to avoid our obligation to the poor, as Jesus himself put the needs of the poor ahead of his own. No, her generous gift is appropriate to the moment, this moment of tender time, and Jesus is was gracious enough to receive it with gratitude. Reverend Bill Carter, our jazz pianist, Presbyterian minister friend, who will be here for our Pentecost Vespers celebration of June 9. He was instrumental in us getting our Jazz Vespers going 16 years ago. Bill, in a sermon of his, tells of a furor sparked at a church stewardship conference at which an ecumenical group of pastors gathered to discuss generosity. And one presenter spoke about offering a gift directly to God. The clergy began to yawn. But then he pulled a $100 bill from his wallet, set it on fire in an ashtray, and prayed, "Lord, I offer this gift to you and to you alone." Carter says the reaction was electric. Clergy began to fidget in their chairs, watching that greenback go up in smoke as if it were perfume. One whispered that he thought it was illegal to burn currency. Another was heard to murmur, "If he's giving money away, perhaps he has a few more." There was nervous laughter around the room. "Do you not understand?" the speaker said. "I'm offering it to God, and that means it is going to cease to be useful for the rest of us." It was an anxious moment, he said. Continues that if you think about it, a lot of extravagant gifts are put into the air where they soon evaporate. A church choir labors to prepare an intricate anthem, and 3 minutes later, it's gone. Or a teacher prepares a lesson and stands to deliver, and then the class is adjourned. Mourners will send large arrangements of flowers to honor those for whom they grieve, or saints donate large amounts of money for their congregations to spend however they see fit. Why? Why do they do this? Love has its reasons, he says, and they cannot be measured. In this very human, very tender moment, love is expressed through Mary's abundant generosity, Jesus receiving a portion of the blessing and blessed abundance that throughout John's Gospel he provides. At Cana, 180 gallons of new wine are created, even more than a wedding crowd could consume. 5,000 hungry people are fed by the Sea of Galilee with 12 baskets of leftovers remaining. Or after fishing all night with no results, Simon Peter is instructed by the risen Christ to cast his net on the other side of the boat, and immediately 153 large fish begin jumping into the net. When my mom died 9 years ago, the night before her memorial service, I was struggling with what I would share the next day at the service, and about 4 in the morning, it wasn't that I couldn't sleep, I just woke up at about 4 in the morning, and the story of the 5 loaves and 2 fishes came to mind, how they were multiplied by the extravagant generosity of God to feed a multitude. There weren't many at the service besides the family, but at the calling hours the evening before were people I hadn't seen for many years. My high school gymnastics and football coach, who said Benny was one of the best parent supporters that they ever had. He was well into his 80s at that point. Several guys I had grown up with, people who had been part of our lives in such important ways. And being at our home church, where I had spent a lot of time, where my brother and our friends crawled around under the pews, or sat at a table in Fellowship Hall on youth club nights, ate together, or in those old classrooms, or worshiped in the sanctuary, the church where I was ordained. We realized, all of us in the family, when we were there, we were actually told by the young woman pastor there, who who is still there, I think, that our family connection, and it was connected to that church back from 1917. The pastor's name is Mary, and I saw on the board, the church board, that her spelling of it is M-E-R-R-Y. And I asked her how that happened, and she said, my parents were hippies. It was the same for all of us that day, that from Betty and Dale, all this abundance, children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, yes, but the people, the experiences, all of that love, all of those prayers, through good times, bad times, all from God. This intricate tapestry of abundant generosity. In the beautiful passage that Maggie read from the prophet Isaiah, Isaiah proclaims for God, do not remember the former things, or consider the things of old. I am about to do a new thing, even now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness, rivers in the desert. Tender times are times of remembering, but they are also times of letting go. These words proclaimed to Israel as they were living in exile in Babylon, no more a nation, far away from their beloved temple, and so they thought abandoned by their God. An era had passed, and they remembered the mighty acts of God in bringing them through the wilderness in the past, making a way where there was no way. God is still the waymaker. Isaiah reminds them, the one who cuts paths for us when it seems that all we face are obstacles and hopelessness, in order to perceive the new thing that God is doing, the new way that God is providing. We have to let go of the old. For us as individuals, families, this is a call past forgiveness to the yet harder discipline of letting go. For many, it's a call to forget past traumas, past hurts, or past pains. For congregations, it's a challenge to move forward into new understandings, because if we get too comfortable in our present understanding, we aren't going to be able to perceive what God is doing in our midst. And we know how hard it is to let go. But it's the only way for God to transform us. The only way to perceive the new thing. So Mary was letting go of Jesus when she anointed his feet with precious oil. She knew that the more lavish love of God, more lavish than anything she could do, could not be compared to 1,000 clay jars of expensive ointment. Judas complained about her wastefulness, was willing to put a price on the gift of God to the world, figured it was worth about 30 pieces of silver. He couldn't live with himself after he did it. And he couldn't let go of it, as if Jesus wouldn't have forgiven him, even him. According to John, Jesus is sent into a world that did not request him, yet he acts entirely for its benefit. He acts on his own terms, always revealing the grace and the truth of God. Lazarus is raised from the dead on his timetable, not in response to his sister's wishes. And Jesus will lay down his life for his people, not because he's asked to do so, but because he chooses to give himself such abundance, such tender abundance.